Some strange stuff has been going down with Switch over the last few days. One of them was Nintendo created and one of them was internet created. We're going to discuss both. What's going on, everybody? It's Ghost Robo, and today Nintendo had a Direct. Did you know that? Did you know they had a Nindies Direct? I feel like most people found out via secondary sources like blog posts or YouTube videos. I found out via tweets from not Nintendo, but yeah, Nintendo of Europe put out an Indie Highlights presentation today, a 22-minute one. Let's actually run that in the background right now. Here we go. It's basically a Nindies Direct. They didn't call it that, I guess, because it wasn't worldwide. It wasn't, pushed through the normal worldwide channels. It was just in Nintendo of Europe, and obviously it is due to Gamescom, and leading up to that, they wanted to get some announcements out there. They released some games today. They had some cool things to discuss. It's just so strange that, A, they did this with no hyper fanfare. It just was there at 8 a.m. Eastern this morning. And then B, they didn't replicate it across their other region channels. All that happened was Nintendo America tweeted a link to the Nintendo of Europe YouTube channel. And yeah, it's very cool to drop surprise things. We've seen that happen before with Nintendo, and it's kind of cool to just wake up and boom, there's a presentation. But it's very weird that it was not echoed across all of their normal channels. Now, this presentation had a lot of indie games, some updates on release dates, and 3 day and date drops. So Morphe's Law, Prison Architect, and Bad North all came out today. I'm in the process of playing through them. Morphe's Law, I can say, is it's not as good as I hoped, but we'll check out the others as well. Now, there were some cool new announcements. My favorite has got to be Slay the Spire. So freaking cool that that game is coming to Switch. If you don't know what it is, go play it. You're missing out. It's a fantastic card game, a roguelike type card game, a run-based card game. Over on Steam, it was top seller for a long time in early access over there. They continue to add. The daily challenges are great. It may not be the best game to record for YouTube, but it is one of my favorite games to play off camera. And now it's coming to Switch in 2019, which will be fantastico. They also announced Windjammers 2. I love Windjammers. If you don't know what that is, it was recently brought back. It's a 1994 game about throwing a disc on a beach against your opponent. It's very competitive, very cool. And they're bringing the original to Switch, but they also announced a sequel for Switch, which was cool. They also announced this game here, Nightcall. This War Is Mine. They gave some updates on other titles as well, like Moonlighter and whatnot. It was a pretty good presentation, 22 minutes worth, and they showed extended looks at the games that they discussed. It had a different narrator, this woman kind of going over what's going on here. It was just presented in a weird style, and maybe that's why they didn't call it a Nindies Direct, but it basically was a Nindies Direct. And across the internet, I've seen people say, like, why did they do it this way? What exactly is going down? Why was this the choice? It kind of seems like they just kind of wanted to, like, scoot it out the way, but I don't feel that's the case because there were so many cool announcements and games that would have garnered decent buzz. And even after the Indie Highlights, more things came out. Like A Hat in Time, hey, it's coming to Switch. A lot of people love that game. It is very reminiscent of the Banjo-Kazooie Mario 64 Collectathon era, except done up in a more modern way. And I think a lot of people regard that game more highly than they do Yooka-Laylee, if you're going to equate those two as games that are trying to bring that genre and that style of experience back to the forefront. And Hat in Time now is coming to Switch at an undisclosed date. So just odd choices, right? You're going to have a presentation like the Smash one was so good. I feel like that was one of Nintendo's best directs maybe ever, at least in recent memory. This could have been a decent deal too. We heard rumored for a while that there would be a Nindies presentation in August, and hey, it did happen, but with literally not a word. Not a word to hype it up, not a word to alert people, and then barely any word from the Americas whatsoever. And I know Gamescom is a European thing, but man, these games are coming out in the Americas and the West and in other regions, and Morphe's Law and Bad North, they're out here in America right now. So it's not like this was a European-only promotion or something that was only going to affect that region. So it's strange. I think it's also fascinating to consider how things have changed and evolved, and just how communication and reveals and releases and information is disseminated nowadays. It's really interesting, and it has changed so much over the years. The idea of Nintendo controlling their own channels isn't very new. They've done directs for a while now, but if you compare it to a longer period of time and how game information was given to fans or to the audience, it's unique. Now we have a scenario where Nintendo can put out a direct at any time, and they can even not tell you about it. It might even only come out in Europe, and it's just so interesting to see from things that felt so much more set in stone and like locked in a foundational structure that was routine to 2018, where you can have a direct come out and no one knows. You can have these releases come out and no one knows. And I mean, some people know, some people saw the video, but it sat at a low view count for a while. And in comparison to other directs, it has not amassed the amount of viewership that you would traditionally expect, even for a Nindies presentation. What is their motive? Why do they want to do this? I really don't believe the goal is just to like push it out the door. I know that's a possibility, but Nintendo wants to bring focus to these titles. They want to sell games and they want to support their developers. So what is the motivation? What's the mentality? It's hard for me to put my finger on it, why you would do this in such a way, but they feel like it makes marketing sense, and it's just intriguing and it's different, right? It's not what you've come to expect if you've been a gaming fan for decades like I have. Decades, it's a weird, scary thing to say, but it's true. You know, back in the day when I would read my magazines and Nintendo Power and EGM, and then eventually reading websites and listening to podcasts, and how things sort of came out, it was not the way it is today. And I think that a lot of things have definitely moved in a much better direction, in a more direct direction, in terms of getting it straight to you and not having to deal with middlemen, and it's quick and it's efficient. It's just weird on a day like today when it happens in such a roundabout, or such an it feels like almost like it's an amorphous blob, just like bleh, it's just out there, and you have to kind of tap into it yourself, and that is strange. And I'd love to see what sort of their feedback internally is on this style of doing things, and the surprise, and one region, and like, I don't know. Can someone make me a fly on the wall for these meetings? I really want to hear. The other one that we got to discuss is the rumor, and this one does not come from Nintendo, but it's still a strange Switch thing. There was a rumor circulating, and it kind of was like the biggest discussion of the weekend, about a new Nintendo Switch coming in 2019. A new Nintendo Switch coming in 2019. And I'll just give you the verbatim tweet. This comes from @MarcusSellers. Nintendo will be releasing an improved version of the Nintendo Switch early 2019. This console of 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of internal storage, and dynamic scaling up to 4K. Some third-party games will only release on this version. All Nintendo-produced games will release on both. And since then, a lot of people have said, like, what the heck? And there were other people that contributed to this discussion as well, on the side of, yeah, there is an upgraded Switch happening. I think this one was the most granular and the most direct, but other people played into this as well. We had Per Schneider from IGN say, like, dude, this is not true, it's not happening. Liam Robertson, who is a known Nintendo face in the community, he was like, this is not true at all. But the people that propagated this idea continue to assert that, yeah, it is a thing. I think that would be insanely weird. I think it would be weirder for Nintendo to magic drop a new version of Switch in early 2019 than it was for Nintendo to magic drop this non-Nindies Direct today on August the 20th with new games and no fanfare. I do wonder, like, if you're one of those games where you're like, man, I wish this would have gotten broadcast across all the regions. We have seen Japan-specific directs in the past, but for something that is this diverse, it's odd that it got such limited exposure and limited release. Anyhow, back to this 2019 Switch. An upgraded Switch is an interesting idea. Something that can scale to 4K definitely helps get Nintendo closer, right? And as we know, PS5 and Xbox Scarlet have to be on the horizon. Maybe they're not releasing next year, but they'll probably be discussed next year. And we have seen a recent rumor, I don't know that there's much validity to it, but that, PS5 is pushing for a 2019 fall launch. I feel like that's a bit far-fetched. I expect to see it at E3. I don't think we get the console until 2020. But nonetheless, a 4K Switch or an upgraded Switch model would help them close that gap, because as you shift your development teams over to PS5 and Xbox Scarlet, it feels like it's going to be more difficult to make those ports available for Switch, and third parties, something that Nintendo already struggles with, although certain studios like Panic Button are able to concoct magic, and that's why we're getting something like Doom Eternal next year on the Switch, which is absolutely bellissimo, an incredible effort, and if it looks even as good as Wolfenstein 2 and runs that well and has cool motion aim, I'm all for it. If Nintendo wants more of that and they feel like garnering the support of third parties is going to be critical to their elongated success, then upgrading would make sense. But doing it in early 2019 does not, and the reasons why are as follows. One, you're still selling insanely well on the Switch, and it would be a huge burn to holiday shoppers to say, ha, 5 to 10 million of you bought the Switch this holiday season. Sucks to suck, the new model is out early 2019. And yes, we've heard that, oh, maybe they could do a big trade-in program and really incentivize your upgrade, but it still would suck. It would be a move in the wrong direction for a company that has worked very tirelessly to achieve awesome mindshare and finally has it. Like, they have probably their most fantastic positioning in forever, maybe even since the Super Nintendo. The Switch is beloved, and it has turned a whole new leaf for Nintendo, especially in comparison to the last generation. So why throw that away? I don't really know. It seems like it would be a very silly endeavor. Now, you're also launching some of your biggest franchises this fall in the form of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. So you are incentivizing a lot of people to invest right now. If you were going to drop a new Switch, why wouldn't you put it out preceding those launches, and then you could get people to get it because of those games and they would be on board? So just timing wise, it seems incredibly obtuse. Splitting your audience also is very weird. We saw Nintendo attempt that with the new 3DS and try to go, hey, we're going to give some new 3DS exclusive games because there's a little more power and better loads and better battery life and the C stick and whatever. It worked for what? 2 titles, the SNES Virtual Console games. Nintendo really tried to like give some value there. It just wasn't there. Xenoblade Chronicles. Okay. That was a new 3DS exclusive game. Other than that, I know Fire Emblem Warriors is, and like I said, some eShop stuff, but it's very sparse. And as we've seen with the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, why those are successful is because they upgrade and enhance without splitting. And I think this idea that some third-party games will only release on the new version is very silly. And they have clarified that no, it's not going to be all, it's just going to be some. You know, most games are going to work on both, but I think anytime you get really awkward like that, I feel like Nintendo would have learned from how the Wii and the Wii U and the naming conventions of the 3DS and the new 3DS and the 3DS XL and the 2DS and the 2DS XL, how that all went. I feel like they would do a better job. And so creating a mid-cycle upgrade Switch that also has exclusive games, it just feels so not right. Also, there's the point that Nintendo has not chased graphics for a long time. Power and specs is not something that they seem to value very highly. And maybe they're ready to turn a new leaf. They do have a new president. They do have new people in place. And they are finding a new level of success that they're not as familiar with lately. And they are finding a, like I mentioned, a love in the hearts and minds of gamers that perhaps makes them reconsider some of their strategies. I just don't feel like an early 2019 release of a new console would be one of those strategies. Do I think an upgraded Switch eventually happens? Yes, I think that makes sense, and I think Nintendo might be ready to take that step. We've seen them do iterative releases with their handhelds, and the Switch is a handheld hybrid, so why not? It could work. Or at least a form factor switch up. I do feel like a power change would be the better move, as long as it does not split the user base. Unless you're talking like a 2021, 2022 launch, and then you're like 4 or 5 years in the console cycle, and you want to split then, okay. I will remind you, and it was fascinating to me, that the PlayStation 4 Pro came out around the same time frame as 2019 for the Switch, and by that I mean year 3. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Nintendo would release a new platform, an upgraded model, but I think it would need to be done with a little more care than an early 2019 launch right after Smash and Pokemon, because plenty of people are going to pick up a Switch for those games and then feel burned. A fall release, you may have me more inclined to believe. But a lot of this, I think, stems from these findings that Nintendo has put, they have filed for a new model of Switch. And they have done some changes to the hardware to better protect against homebrew and hacking. I feel like that's where a lot of this kind of comes from, is those early, there were some rumors and some different just confusion, I guess, on what this new model was. And I don't know that it is exactly what is causing these rumors, but I feel like that's a part of it. And there's just been talk of like an upgraded Switch from the beginning. I think that's just where we are in the industry right now, and so it makes sense. It's something to think about and consider for Nintendo. And like I said, I expect it to happen. I just don't think it's this early. And if it is, I would be stunned. Then again, I was stunned by the way Nintendo handled things this morning. So maybe they are just out to surprise the heck out of people in both the good and the bad ways. What do you think about a 4K upgraded Switch? What would you pay for one? Would you want to upgrade? Would you feel burned? If you buy a Switch this year, if you've already bought a Switch this year, obviously you're getting a great deal, right? It is a fantastic platform with a boatload of releases, at least on the eShop. We are getting more and more retail releases, and you still have that awesome Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Super Mario Party, Pokemon Let's Go, NBA 2K19, stuff like that coming out later this year with the promise of Doom Eternal and hopefully more in 2019 alongside Fire Emblem and Metroid Prime 4. You've been filled up with Mario Kart, Mario Tennis Aces, Super Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2, Mario plus Rabbids, a lot of good stuff. But was that enough good stuff to justify your purchase, and would you be ready to upgrade for inevitably a more expensive model? I don't know how you could package this that would be appealing to early adopters without feeling like a burn. I will say that Nintendo does have some history, some notable history of doing things that are like, what the heck are you doing? And making decisions that don't line up with what we feel is common sense. So, by history alone, there is plausibility that they do something out of left field and off the wall. And it's ironic that this thing happened this morning because that's kind of reflective. Maybe not an egregious example, but it's reflective of doing things that seem kind of not really in the like that aren't thought out 100%. So perhaps it happens. I just feel like it's incredibly unlikely given the success, given how consistent they have been on their releases and on keeping this thing, this train, this Switch momentum hype rolling. An abrupt change of course seems self-destructive, don't you think? I would love to get a new Switch because I love new hardware. I think that's the most exciting part of gaming for me. It's like new consoles and unboxing that stuff and checking it out and exploring the UI and just playing with it is the most fun I have in gaming. So I love the idea. It just feels like the wrong time. I don't even know if it's the right idea at the wrong time. It might just be an idea at the wrong time. We'll see, though. I don't give any credence to these rumors. I think they're false, if you want to know my heartfelt opinion. And I feel it was very weird that they did this indie highlight earlier today. But I want to know your take in the comments down below. And hopefully that brings you up to speed. Maybe you didn't even know about the Direct. If you didn't, I'd love to know if you didn't even know yet that this went on. Because I feel like a lot of people are still unsure that this happened. There's announcements going on, but were you aware that it was packaged by Nintendo in the form of a name swap Nindies Direct? Let me know in the comments down below. And let me know if you've had a chance to check out any of the games that released today. In the meantime, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy yourselves. We'll be back with more regular content. I've been sick for about a week, and I'm getting over it, so I should be good to go. But it wiped me out, and I was sleeping a ton. Thank you for being really cool to me. Always appreciate it a lot. Until next time, thanks again. I love you, and have a day, and we will see you all later.